Hello, hello, hello. Guess what time it is? It's noon, Pacific Daylight Time, and, East Coast or whatever, adjust your times accordingly. Welcome to another episode of Naked with Dr. Money. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ardrey. So happy you could join me today. This journey of sharing a little bit of the behind scenes journey of building this global wellness organization and reaching out to connect with each of you and bring you tools that'll help you live your best life. And in our world at ZenoVerse Wellness Group and our 420 Wellness Jamaica resorts, we believe that full life is 120 years and beyond. Yeah, 120 years and beyond. So when you set that intention to live full life, then you can look at yourself. Like now, people say, oh, I have less life in front of me than what I've lived. Nah, I've turned that around. I have more life yet to live than what I've already lived. And I'm so excited to be able to live the life with what it is I've gained thus far and given myself permission to continue to learn and explore each and every day. So, what I've been focused on is, as many of you have heard, I've been talking about the Naked with Dr. Money 20 city tour that's coming up. That tour is about self love because self love is part one on the healing journey. And if we begin to get on that healing journey, then it helps us mind, body, and soul. It all begins there. Last week, I shared how I had been personally going through a few challenges with nerves, stress, and all of those things. And it manifested in my body in a very major way. So much so that I had to sit down and really think through, who did I need to forgive? Who did I need to release? And I tried release, I tried forgiveness. And then finally, I got to the magic word: surrender. And once I was able to surrender, then I was able to ask myself different questions. And as I began to ask myself different questions, I could feel my body begin its healing journey. So, anyway, I'll keep telling you more about those things as we go forward. But today, I am so excited because I'm going to have an amazing conversation with Laura. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Laura in just a second. But Laura and I met earlier in our 20s, and we each were sort of on our own paths. So we had an opportunity to spend some time together. I was the nerdy friend that was dreaming of being this international business tycoon back then. So although we had different connections with entertainment and all of that stuff, I was the one like, okay, I'm over here reading the business books. I'm over here trying to, figure out how to develop some stuff and all of those things. But it's a beautiful thing to reconnect and see how folks' lives have progressed, and see what it is you still, share or have in common, or opportunities, to catch up and connect. Laura is the author of Stash. Laura Cathcart Robbins is the author. She's an author and freelance writer, speaker, host of the popular podcast, The Only One in the Room, which I love. I've had an opportunity to consume several episodes. It's a fabulous podcast. She's been active for many years as a speaker and school trustee, and is credited for creating the Buckley School's nationally recognized Committee on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice. Her recent articles in HuffPost and The Temper on the subjects of race, recovery, and divorce have garnered her worldwide acclaim. She's a 2022 TEDx speaker and LA Moth Story Slam winner. Laura is badass. She's on the advisory boards of San Diego Writers Festival, the Outliers HQ Podcast Festival. She lives in California. She's a mother, and she's a friend, and she's a colleague. So here we go. Let's bring on Laura. So, hey, beautiful lady.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. That was a great intro.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Oh my goodness, it's so nice to share time with you. I'm glad that we could get this on the calendar and spend time. Laura, I have to tell you,
Yeah.
I think social media is beautiful in a sense that it's allowed a way to have a relationship kind of in a way that sometimes we couldn't have relationships because we're all so busy running in so many different directions. So even though
Yeah.
there's been a gap, it sort of feels like, well, I kind of know a couple things here and there, right? Not everything, but a couple things. So it's nice
Yes.
to really, just be able to have this conversation. And so, as I may have mentioned to you, I usually talk about mindset, motivations, and manifestations. So, I want to kind of talk about that, but also in the context of your book and your journey.
Mm.
Want to basically look at not only now, but kind of a reflection back. And I'll share with you something that I heard earlier today. I was listening to an interview with Janelle Monáe.
I love her.
Said, I know she's so wonderful. And she said, though, where she is right now, she realized that people are interested in how you fall down, how do you get back up, what's the behind scenes look, what kind of self talk does it
Mm.
require to navigate yourself. So I'll open that up with from the standpoint of mindset. Do you
Mm-hmm.
personally think back to when you first realized that you had a mindset, but number two, do you think it was the product of your nature, your nurturing, or a little bit of both?
I think that it was probably more the product of my nurturing than my nature. I I remember very little of who I was before I started editing myself in my home where I grew up.
Mm,
And there was this cult in my home. It would get violent if I rubbed my stepfather the wrong way.
mm,
So I learned very quickly to make everything stop that was violent by being small, by pleasing, you
mm,
know, somebody. What about this? Or offering something, or offering behavior that I knew would be pleasing.
mm,
And outside of my home, I was very much in the
mm,
hustle culture, because I wanted to be far away from there. I wanted what I saw my friends having. I wanted peace and tranquility and stability. And I knew that in order to have that, I would have to have my own sanctuary or place. And so I was very much inspired. Like, I always had jobs,
mm,
always was kind of keeping people at an arm's length while I did my thing.
mhm,
And, but very, very much of the hustle culture outside of my home. But, um, I think by nature, I, I might have not, that hustle culture might not have been a part of me.
mhm.
Nor would the making myself small. Definitely wouldn't have been a part of my mindset.
Mhm. That's so interesting because when we talk about mindset, and especially when I talk about as it relates to wellness, right? The
Mm-hmm.
things that we often forget is that those thoughts are what began the disease. And it shows up in not only from the emotional trauma, but a physical manifestation. So when you go back to just saying that, um, home experience and the idea of I needed to move myself away from this experience. I needed to frame my behavior. As a young person, you don't know what that's doing internally.
Yeah.
Is there a point along your journey that you felt something? Maybe that's when the beginning of not only do I need to take care of myself financially, but how do I take care of myself emotionally? Who do you trust
Mm-hmm.
as your emotional go-to at that time in that framework, and then as you're kind of making your moves forward?
Yeah, I think that for years and years and years, I didn't fully trust anyone.
Mm,
And I literally lost my voice. I was hospitalized for 2 weeks. I had a tonsillectomy as an adult. I was an early mom. My kids were little. I was in my early 30s, and I lost my voice and had to be hospitalized because the surgery there was so much scar tissue in my throat. And as I was laying there unable to talk in the hospital, which is a horrible place to contemplate anything,
Mhm.
I was realizing that I literally lost my voice in my life. You know, that this is how my making myself small had manifested. Where I don't have a voice. I can't even tell the nurses what I want. Like literally, I couldn't do that, but also figuratively and metaphorically, I had lost my voice. And
Mhm.
I didn't start to get my voice back for another 10 years.
Okay.
But I realized it at that point.
So did you have a support system like aunts or some other kind of safe place or safe space?
I mean, I have my parents, my not my stepfather, but my mother and my father, they were always safe places for me.
Mhm.
I was only told, not only told, but I was told over and over again that how much I was loved, how smart I was, how beautiful I was inside and out, how beautiful Black was, like what a lucky person I was to be Black, to have this hair, to have this skin, to have these features. So I felt that love. I internalized that love, but I also didn't, and I love that you used the word surrender when you were talking. I didn't completely surrender to anything or anyone at that point. I still held on to this baggage that I had, stuffed and carried around with me from my stepfather when I was little. So
Mhm.
no one got to see what was inside that baggage, not even the people who loved me the most.
Mhm. And so when you think about kind of some of your motivations, I know that some of your motivations initially manifests from this idea of I need to shift here. When we
Hmm.
start talking about the journey, if you will, through adulting, through your marriage, as relates to the story that you tell in the book
Yeah.
Stash. I mean, I felt like I went on, the emotional journey with you. My heart hurt
Mm.
when you shared things that hurt you.
Yeah.
Um, the joy of the excitement of your success. I'm like, my Black Barbie girlfriend, is, the beautiful friend, like you're the Black Barbie, and
Ah,
you know what I mean? And so I understand still though, sometimes there are people who are outside your circle and you don't know who are, high five and rooting you on. That to me
mhm.
is who I think I am in terms of, if somebody's winning or trying to win, I'm there. You buy the book, I buy a book. You know what I mean? It's like that's
Yes. Yeah.
just who I am to contribute my little part towards that, known or not. You know what I'm saying? But some of the motivation that you talk about, and then you say the baggage. Um,
Hmm.
maybe let's kind of segue into more of the story around, the book. At what point did you, let's
Yeah.
have that conversation.
Yeah, I think that was a really nice segue into it. So I had, separated myself from my authentic self at a very early age, like I talked about, edited and altered myself throughout my childhood, throughout my teenage years, throughout my young adulthood. And then I was this mom who really didn't know what she was doing as a mom. I was trying to learn kind of on the job by watching other people. I was a wife and I didn't know what I was doing as a wife. I'm not domestic. I'm not girly. I'm not any of the things that I saw being exhibited around me. And I tried to blend in because blending in is the way I survived my childhood. Blending in and not making waves and not standing out was the way I survived. So I do that instinctually.
Mhm,
And I think this was all scaffolding for postpartum anxiety,
mhm,
which is what I think I had after my second son was born, which I then treated with the prescribed sleeping pills that were given to me. They
mhm.
were miraculous for it. I was able to sleep. I felt like a new woman. I
Wow.
had been, previous to the prescription, this very short tempered, kind of not fun mom because I just felt like I was treading water. And
Mhm,
then after I got a good night's sleep with the help of Ambien, I felt like I could be the mom that I wanted to be. And very quickly, it clicked into place for me. I need to take these pills in order to show up for my family. These
mhm,
pills are the panacea. They are the thing that's going to allow me to be the kind of mom that I've been observing and have wanted to be the kind of wife that I wanted to be.
mhm,
And they worked, for a year. I write about the year 2008 and Stash My Life in Hiding. But I give you backstory about what leads up to that 10-month period. And during that 10-month period, I'm taking basically as many Ambien as I can get on a daily basis. But it was that Hemingway quote. It was gradually and then suddenly. Like gradually, I was the frog in, the boiling, the pot of cold water that slowly goes to a boil. Until it was boiling hot, I didn't know what was happening. And so I would take, an extra half here, an extra half there at first. I wake up in the middle of the night, I take another one. And then finally, in the year 2008, I'm taking 10 Ambien, which is a lethal dose.
I was going to say, just how was your body handling?
My tolerance was so high that anything less wouldn't put me to sleep. I wasn't taking 10 at once. I was taking like 3 to get to sleep, and then I wake up and take 2, and then I wake up a second time and take 1. And then, and it wasn't 10 every day either, because I actually didn't have that many. But on the days where I had enough, I was taking 10. And I was also in the middle of a divorce, which was, incredibly painful. And those pills helped with that pain as well. I got to sleep, which meant I got to forget all of that pain that was going on in my real life. But I was still a mom, and I was named the Parent Association president that year at my children's school. I was on the board. I was hitting my tennis lessons, my workouts. I was throwing dinner parties. I was going to premieres. So outside, everything looked normal. Everything looked good. But inside, I was dying.
So did you have any type of personal practice? Like, have you been a meditator or yoga or any kind of things where you created space for you?
During that time?
Just, yeah, even before that time, or kind of just in general? Because I know I only mastered meditation in the last year.
Yeah.
But people always suggested it, but I could never seem to do it right. Now that I've found that space and what it's like, oh my God, that's the best thing. I wish I could have done this 10, 20 years ago, right? But I couldn't get that practice going. So no.
Actually, my stepfather used to punish me with meditation. When he felt like I was too much, I would have to sit in front of him and meditate for X amount of minutes. And I hated it. I hated him. I hated it. I wanted nothing to do with it. And then when I got sober, which I also did in the year 2008, my addiction came to a head, and then I checked into treatment and I got sober. I entered a 12-step program where meditation is one of the steps. And I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I have this incredible trauma attached to meditating. But, I'm almost 15 years later, and I would say it was probably 2 years before I really developed a practice that I was comfortable with. I'm a daily meditator now, and I have been for years. I don't always love it. I don't have the experience that you're talking about, but it's like a cocktail of things. Like, I work out, I meditate, I'm of service. I'm in this work that I do to stay sober, the work that I did to get sober, I continue to do. And I am better because of it. And I have freedom because of it. So even though it's not my favorite thing to do, which working out is not either, but I work out every day anyway. I meditate every day anyway. And sometimes the meditation is profound and life altering. And sometimes it's just minutes for me to get through, but it doesn't matter. I do it every day.
So that's very interesting. And I love it when you talk about the 12 steps, and that being one of the steps. And there's 2 questions that come up for me. One, I want to go back to the question of when you shared being in the hospital and losing your voice and realizing that you had a lot of scar tissue and all of those things.
Yes.
What did you do to begin to work from that? Like, did you recognize at that point that some of it had to do with the emotional trauma and also the things that you had been, forced to shrink? Was that awareness present for you at that time?
It wasn't. It was suggested to me by someone who loved me at that time that this might be a manifestation of that. But I wasn't checking for manifestations of anything then. Didn't really believe in that. That was not part of the culture in which I was raised. And I dismissed it. I dismissed it out of hand. And it wasn't until I started doing the work after I got sober to look at causes and conditions, where I looked at that particular, I wrote about that time in my life and was like, wow, look what happened. You know, this trauma that I experienced, you know, some of it was brought to me and some of it was of my own making.
Sure.
Brought me to this place. And my body is talking to me. You know, it shut me down. It was like, we can't go any further. And I found that a lot with illness, over the years, not since I've been sober, but where I just like, my body just says stop. But I never saw it like that before. I saw it as like I got a bug or something external, but nothing, I never attributed it to anything internal.
It's so interesting because I have been a follower of Louise Hay for a long time, so I think it's like this secret thing on this wellness journey that I've been curious about. And it really started because my mom, when we bought our house at 9, she didn't know how to cook. So my elementary school had like a book fair. And I remember she bought 2 books. She bought this soul food cookbook and she bought Back to Eden. And, right, exactly. And so people thought I was so weird. I was so foo-foo. That's what everybody says, Stephanie is so foo. But her intention was she wanted to learn to cook, but she wanted to cook in such a way that I would not have high blood pressure. And so she succeeded with that intention. And because of that, I've been able to pass all of those things forward, right? But when I think about my body, whenever I get pains, the first thing that I go and do is I have this Louise Hay body dictionary that basically describes, depending upon where the ailment or condition is, what the possible thoughts are, and then what the affirmation should be to address it. And I found it to be spot on, like,
Wow.
OMG, can I tell you, stuff that manifests, it knows right where to go. And it's literally those thoughts, those 8-year-old little girl thoughts that, at 8 and 7 and 6, where I said, I was forced to manage the emotions of adults. I was a kid. Why am I trying to manage and act so I can relate to you, trying to, be a small or, show up if they want you to be on stage now, show up perfectly, smile, ready to
Yeah.
perform, even though you could have been crying backstage to say, whatever it was, but certainly to accommodate the emotions of the adults without any regard to my own emotions as a young person. So I found myself being disconnected. So kind of with your reconnection to your voice, how was that process? How did that happen for you?
I think this has been a slow process for me, maybe slower than most, because I was so resistant to the idea of any kind of spiritual work. I hadn't been raised in a spiritual home, even though meditation was part of my punishment. I had no connection. I hadn't been I'd never been in a house of worship of any kind until I went to a wedding in my teens. Like, this was never introduced to me. And the idea of doing something that wasn't just about the physical, or I could understand mental health, but emotional health was something that was completely foreign to me, and I was very resistant to that idea. So I did bits and pieces of it, but I didn't shy away from the work that was presented to me to do, but I don't know that it had the effect. It was like I was a glacier, and it took a while for me to thaw and warm up to these notions that this might be, if I wanted to not need anything again. And I mean, needing anything in the way, obviously, of drugs and alcohol, but also just anything, like anything that people use, shopping or sex or relationships or gambling or television, to not have to stop what I'm doing and consume something, however that might look. If I wanted to be free of that bondage, I would need to continue to do this work and warm up to these ideas that these were things that could support this new way that I wanted to live. So it was a slow process for me. It's still a slow process. My knee jerk is resistance when I'm introduced to anything new. And then what I've taught myself to do is to be like, okay, you're resistant, but we're going to look at this.
Okay.
And then we're going to try it.
Okay.
And we're going to try it more than once to see how it feels for us, because not everything is for me.
Sure.
But I won't know that unless I try. And this is something else I've learned over these last 15 years.
And so then on top of that, in terms of kind of the 12-step program, that process, I have not had an opportunity to be firsthand, but I've been an observer, and I think that it has a lot of merits. There are a lot of methodologies that I've been creating because I see that people benefit from both being in community and being in conversations. But really what I'm wanting to do is connect with people where they are, right? And help them on their develop a wellness practice that allows them to address their mind, body, and soul for the rest of, their time, right, as they desire. And so when in having this conversation with you, maybe if you can share how that process was beneficial. Here's a question that I have for you. In the book, when you talked about leaving rehab and you had set up the prescriptions because you were going to still get the prescriptions. And so to me, it was divine intervention, because when you talk about just even how Scott was with you and all of those things being unusual, but really they weren't. They were aimed to help you. That's kind of why we say grace, the Almighty, and the grace shows up sort of where we need it. We don't even know it. How did past that you really, kind of build from that?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, I had only gone to rehab because I had kind of comforted myself with the idea that I could use again afterward. I went to rehab so that I could save my relationship with my children, but I agreed to it because I thought I can get high again after this. And so I had really strategically planned that out. I had a refill ready for me that I was going to pick up just, a mile away from the treatment center. And Scott, my now boyfriend, for the last 15 years, he left that treatment center with me, which was not usual. They never let people leave together of the opposite gender. And I was either too embarrassed or too just confused as to how to get that refill with him around me. So I didn't. And then when I got back to Los Angeles, my divorce attorney she was very prescriptive about what I needed to do in order to have the best case possible. And one of those things was drug testing twice a week. And I was just like, are they asking for this? Like, why do I need to, what? And nobody had asked for it, but she thought it was a good idea. And it is. Because if anybody ever called it into question, we would have evidence, like, nope, we've been drug testing for the last 6 months and she's clean. But that to me meant that I couldn't drink or use then either. So I already missed one opportunity. And then there was the second. And so resentfully, I continued along the path that she had set out for me. But I agree with you. I think that both of these things, I can't really explain what they were, but they certainly, to me, they're not coincidence. And I feel like I've been presented with moments like that all my life. Portals or moments of grace that I have stepped through at times and not at others. And I happened to step through these two because it felt like on my own, I would have been high. Okay. But because these things were introduced into my life at these times, then I went along with what was being given to me, which was, you can't do it now. And that was, in my mind, still temporary. But, like I said, it's 15 years later and it's stuck.
Right. And that's just it. And that's why, I think with anything, what I've come to recognize, I didn't understand, when they talk about the yoga practice, like, what the heck does that mean to have a practice? Now I understand.
Yeah.
Every day. It has to be deliberate. I was having this conversation with my son yesterday, and I was explaining to him how every morning now, before I let my feet leave the bed, when I wake up, I take time to set an intention for the day and do a meditation. And I was asking him if he was feeling my energy, because I'm hugging him and loving on him and setting the intention that he excel with ease. and that he continues to expand and grow and realize all the things that he's seeking, but with ease, that people show up and offer him opportunities that he didn't
Uh,
even know were available to him, and that he be able to with ease step into and then so holding that same intention for myself, right?
mhm.
Um, wasn't always able to necessarily articulate or know what that looked and felt like.
Yeah.
Now, understanding the necessity for that, because I think for me in the short term, where it shows up now, if I've taken on too much stress, I feel it in my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know
I
it's
Same. I absolutely feel it in my body. Whenever anything's wrong with me now, which is rare, if I have a
right.
headache, I'm really stopping and doing like an internal diagnostic sweep to see what's going on, because this is unusual for me to have a headache. And maybe it's as simple as I haven't had enough water that day. Could
Mhm,
be.
mhm,
But it also could be stress. And then
mhm,
what's that stress about? Let's look at that. So
mhm.
there are all kinds of, but for the most part, and I know I'm fortunate because I'm 58 years old and I don't have physical ailments. They are
Right.
foreign to me.
Yes.
But because I don't, when I do, they definitely get my attention.
Absolutely, and that's
Yeah.
really what I was talking about last week, because I went through something where some nerve something that I've been working through, and I said, at first when I first felt the first little tinge, it was sort of like a yield sign. You just kind of pass on through the yield sign, and
Yeah.
then there was a stop sign probably that came up, but I did a Hollywood stop right on through that stop sign, and then suddenly my body said, "Okay, we
Right.
gonna get your undivided attention. We're gonna shut
Yes.
you down." Then it
Yes.
was like, okay, all right. Now I'm searching through. Well, who did I, what's going on? The whole inventory of everything. Look, the
Yes.
pain got so bad that I was like, okay, Lord, please, how far back do I have to go? Like, what did I do something at 10? Like, I'm uncovering, like, let me go back through the whole list. Everybody
Right.
I thought I forgive and I'll forgive them again, like whatever it takes, because I don't want to feel this pain in my body again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, and instead of just medicating it when it comes up, to not put a band-aid on it, but to get to the source of it and eradicate that source or deal with it, whatever that looks like.
And that's challenging. So
Hmm.
I know, because I've looked at things you've published, that you have gotten your voice back.
Yes.
But how do you feel, if you will, in terms of not only the motivation around your voice? You understand the importance of your voice, not only with Stash, but all of the other things that you've published, because you have a unique perspective. But how do you feel about your voice and the importance of people gravitating towards your messages?
I am constantly surprised by that. It is, I feel like I can't not use my voice now, but I'm constantly surprised when people want to hear it. Like when I show up to do an event and there are people there, I'm like, what is happening? You're here to hear me talk? That's amazing. It's really, it's so I worked hard. I worked really hard to get my voice back. Not only the work that I talked about, but I also, I lost the ability to read and write for pleasure after I got sober.
Mhm.
And I didn't know if I would get it back. So I started taking classes, writing classes after writing classes. And each thing that I did, another thing was suggested to me to do. And some of that was storytelling, which is the Moth Story Slam that you wrote, that you read about, that I won. Standing on a stage in front of an audience, I'm not the actress girl. Like, I'm not that person that does that. And it's not a comfortable place for me innately. But I pushed through all that because this was suggested as a building block for doing what I want to do, which was write the book that I needed when I was getting sober, just because there wasn't any. And I knew that voice was needed. I didn't know that it needed to be mine at the time, because I thought for sure between now and 15 years from now, someone else would have published one, but nobody did. And so, from that intersection of race addiction and privilege, which is where I sit,
Mhm.
nobody had published that book. So I wrote that book, and I wrote it for maybe one or two people who I thought might need to hear it. And the fact that, people who don't look like me feel like they need to hear it. People who don't have addiction in their lives feel like they need to hear it. People that aren't dealing with divorce, like people that aren't parents. These are all the messages that I'm getting from people who connect with it, which means to me that I need to keep using my voice in the way that I've been using it. But it's still surprising to me.
But that's the blessing. And I think that's the beauty that a lot of times we don't necessarily know or understand when we're going along our journey. I found myself of late encouraging people even harder to, take a stand, use their voice in however it is they've been motivated, which is why with the wellness, I say that we focus on mind, body, and soul. And that soul part is about helping you connect to your ancestral assignments and help you have the community that will allow you to keep manifesting and bringing those assignments forward, right? Because I think that, listen, if we live into 120 years, we got a lot of stuff to be doing, right?
We do.
I'm not sitting in front of nobody's TV. Look, because the best way to live is to be moving. So that means we have a lot of stuff to do.
Indeed, we do.
I want to be engaged in all of that, right? And I want to be in those conversations. I want to have conversations like this. Actually, I can't wait to feature you at our resorts as part of one of the things that we will be doing is having different conversations where we're bringing people together, because I can see the benefit of people being able to be in a close environment, but also being able to get their nutrition and all those other things that we bring to the table and feeling awesome, right?
Yeah.
Living your best life, while doing the things that you love doing, such that it's not like work. It's just, I'm just living and being authentically true to me.
I can't wait. So you let me know when, and I will be there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know that we've talked about a few things. Is there anything that I missed that you want to touch on?
Well, since this is still the month of May and it is a Mental Health Awareness Month, I would just like to give a shout out to all our communities of culture where these things are discussed in secret and in whispers, and people who go get help are looked, get the side eye or get shut down by family members because we don't tell our business out there. It is as important as going to the doctor to get your checkup, to deal with things that come up for you mentally. If I had dealt with my postpartum anxiety in a meaningful way at the time, I might not have needed to treat it with a medication that I later became addicted to. But I was afraid to discuss it with my doctor because of all the messaging I had got. So for Mental Health Awareness Month, it is health that we're looking for. Forget the mental. You're looking for health. And that's light work, right? It's not the heavy work that you think. You were just going to make the way that you engage with the world better for you and for everybody else. So that's my plug for Mental Health Awareness Month, especially for communities of culture.
Oh, I love that. And that is so perfect. That's definitely my idea behind the self-love tour, because, there are tools right now that people can use right now, immediately when you're in pain, to stop. You had an emotional situation here. Take care of this so that you keep that from manifesting in your body. Because oftentimes when we look back, I know, when I talk to the medical team, they'll say, when we look back, the person will tell they had a stressful situation, and then a year later, they have this chronic condition that, lo and behold, they didn't realize was also taking root because of that particular emotional trauma not being addressed. Yes, absolutely. And so where are you speaking, or where could someone find out more about your upcoming speaking? Should they go and follow you and podcast? So give those details.
Please. I on social media, I live on Instagram. It's at Laura Cathcart Robbins. That's CATHCART Robbins, ROBBINS. Obviously, it's on the screen in front of you. I'm at Laura Cathcart Robbins, but I'm also at theonlyonepod.com. The name of the podcast is The Only One in the Room. So it's theonlyonepod.com. There you'll see everything, all the speaking, all the events, all the interviews, all the articles, the book, everything.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Well, I hope this is just one of many future conversations.
Me too.
Again, a true friend and fan, and
Yes.
so proud of all of your continued journey. And I just want to applaud you again for the courage, because you're right. The reason that there wasn't one before was somebody had to have the courage to be willing to be naked.
Yes.
And you were willing to share the story, kind of, irrespective of opinions or concerns. This is the journey that I feel comfortable with sharing. And I just applaud you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing
Thank
your
you.
love. All right.
I enjoy getting naked with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's do it again, Mom. I might have
Yes.
to invite you out on some of those 20 city dates. So I'm going to keep you posted about that as well.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. And again, thank you so much for sharing time with me today.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Well, everyone, I don't have many things to add, but hopefully you're able to glean some insights. I enjoyed having this conversation with Laura. Next week, Naked with Dr. Money again, another episode, Wednesday, noon Pacific Daylight Time. I'll be here, and I hope you will be as well. Take care, love on you, and I'll see you next time. Take care.